Today, I want to do a makeup look inspired by the modern medieval aesthetic, also known sometimes as Knightcore or medieval revival. As you can tell from the title, it's really focused on medieval imagery and style from a modern standpoint. So at this point in time, I feel like it borrows a lot from history as much as it borrows from fantasy and our kind of imaginings of what medieval times were like. You'll see a lot of this style in like cosplay, potentially editorial makeup looks and styles, as well as in fantasy movies and even books. But I do think there's a lot you can borrow from these aesthetics really easily that you can put into your everyday. What I want to do with my makeup today, though, is really focus on the idea of a female knight or a warrior kind of look, something that would really go with those, motifs of armor and swords and feel really kind of powerful. And this kind of brings me to the point that I've noticed a lot of modern medieval explorations are often done from the lens of kind of feminism or queer folks who are interested in like kind of reclaiming these aesthetics that weren't accessible to anyone other than men. Like a knight, you often think of a man. So I think it's really cool to take our modern perspective, our modern imaginings, and just really revisit the medieval times. So before I get into the makeup look, I'm going to do a little bit of an exploration of the medieval aesthetic. So let's get into it. I think a lot of people are quite familiar with the recent Chappell Roan VMA look. She had two looks that explored the modern medieval look, both on the red carpet and in her performance. One was sort of kind of like womanly medieval look, kind of classically feminine in some ways, yet with these knightly motifs. And then her second look in her performance was full on knight. It was pretty cool. And I did do a short of the look she wore on the red carpet if you want to see a little breakdown of that one. But that was like a very well-known one, and people really, I think, we're connected with that look. I noticed there's a lot of people on Instagram who are exploring this through kind of aesthetic photographs. And thank you to Robin of Wheeling Along 24 who brought to my attention a lot of these creators. So people like Incandescent Kiki, Lady Epi, and Clothes Horse. These people are really exploring medieval looks, both from that knight lens and then some of the more traditionally, quote unquote, feminine looks. And yes, the pre-Raphaelite paintings explore a lot of medieval images, whether it's from, again, that fantasy sort of mythic lens or kind of historical in some ways. You're going to see those knights, you're going to see those long dresses. And if you want a makeup look on that, I did a video breaking down that. That's much more of the sort of softer, kind of feminine look versus my very knightly modern look I'm doing today. And then the 1960s, they had like a big medieval renaissance, as you can say, or medieval revival in a much more kind of campy way, very silly, very bard-like. And at the end of The Love Witch, if anyone's seen that, which was very much borrowing a lot of images from the 1960s, there was this whole like Renaissance fair that had a lot of like medieval looks to it and medieval imagery. Such a strange movie. The end of that felt like a fever dream. And then very specifically in terms of some of the style motifs, of course, like chainmail is classic, but you can see chainmail like showing up in a lot of editorial looks, whether it's like in something that's in someone's hair or even like a necklace, bracelet, rings a lot piled on in a way that almost looks like part of armor. And then armor in more like editorial looks. Swords, of course, but then think of how swords can be in like jewelry, a little bit of a sword dangling here, or daggers and necklaces like that. Generally, pewter as a color, silver as a color. I think of medieval and I think of often like a really, really rich red. So I will definitely be playing with that today. And then, for more feminine looks like bell sleeves, jewelry that's like, has like Catholic motifs on it, or those like headpieces, long, wavy, fluffy hair, just like long dresses, velvet, tie up, garments that you can add into your look. So a lot of these do feel, again, like a lot, like really dress up, but then little bits you can just start to integrate into your looks. Like I love bell sleeves. Even like this, which has like this kind of tiered sleeve, I often think of as like feeling like our modern imagining of medieval looks and like what someone might wear as an undergarment and then put something tighter over it. That is slightly medieval inspired even. So let's get into the makeup look. Really excited for this one. Definitely gonna be a little bold, but hopefully feeling very powerful. I feel like I'd like to sculpt out my face, and I just got this Rituel de Fille contour shade in Intuition. Very cool tone, and they've just expanded their contour shades if you're interested. So this one was kind of a cult classic and pretty new to me, but I'm liking it so far. So I'm just going to sculpt out just below the cheekbone. I feel like just contour makes sense because I'm like working with silvers today and it's just going to complement the cool tones. And I don't know, when I think of a warrior, I do think of potentially more of that sculpted kind of look. Not that you have to be sculpted, because I am certainly not, but I really want to emphasize that cheekbone. Make it look sharper than it really is. Truly a cool tone contour. I know a lot of people have trouble finding contours that are actually cool. In fact, this might be slightly cool for my complexion, but that's okay. Also from Rituel de Fille, I have this shade called Frenzy. It's kind of a darker reddish pink. And I'm going to place that just above the contour shade, kind of mixing it in a little bit, but mostly going right above it and like following that same line. Generally, when I'm doing a more kind of fierce look, I tend to place the blush more in like this shape versus when I did the more, I'm going to call it like the medieval maiden look of the pre-Raphaelite look, that's like flushed all over and really leaning into the fullness of my cheeks. So it's kind of fun how you can kind of change the placement of the blush ever so slightly to create a different effect. I'd like to jump into the lips before the eyes because I do want the lips to feel pretty impactful and make sure that eyes aren't competing too much, even though they'll probably be quite bold as well. And I'm going to use two shades. I'm going to align with a cool tone shade, which is Unearthly Liner in Cursed, and then use a very rich red from Rituel de Fille that is Ravenous. This is really just to shape out the lip a little bit because the shades are pretty dissimilar. And now let's go into the super rich red that is Ravenous. I'm going to build it up. Start a little bit lighter and then bring more depth to it. Okay, there's something really, really cool about that combination. Like the cool tone of the liner just slightly subdued the rich red so that it feels like a very kind of like gothic muted red lip. I don't know, love it. Really, really impactful. Now when it comes to the eyes, I am so tempted just to like do something wildly editorial when it comes to like swiping some kind of silver, just like shwa, right across the lid, but I feel like I need to give this a little bit more structure. Otherwise, I'm going to land in some trouble trying to fix it up. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to lay down this really, really bright white as a base all over the lid. It's such a bright white. It's almost like a, I don't know what to call it. It's like a really bright gray even. You can really see that it's cool toned. I'm going to bring this all over the lid, all the way up to the brow bone, all the way to the inner corner. Just really kind of block off this whole section. And then I'm going to go into this Glaminatrix. It's the new one, Nearly Natural palette. And I'm going to use this shade, maybe a bit of this shade on the lower lash line because I want to tie in the lip and the cheek tones with the eye as well. Because as much as I'm going to be playing with silvers, I do think a little bit of a tie in there might be nice. So just like placing this on the lower lash line, kind of squinting to get that right shape. And you know what? I might even bring that kind of pinkish shade onto the upper lid as well. So I'm going to use that to define the crease. At this point, I want to go into that shimmer. Calling it a shimmer almost feels like the wrong word for it. It's truly like a foil. Like it literally looks as silver as armor. It's really amazing. I'm going to place that on the lid. Yeah, I want to see where the silver is going to take me before I flesh out anything else part of the eye. Isn't that like a amazing silver? I'm not big on silvers, but the texture is just amazing. Now, something I've noticed because I watch myself so often when I'm editing and stuff is when you're applying any kind of, whether it's a shimmer or a color that's going to make up the bulk of kind of the eye space, you know, the sort of traditional eyeshadow placement, it's very easy to raise your brows even slightly. And then when you drop your brows, you've kind of missed out on an opportunity to put more of the shading here, especially potentially if you have hooded eyes or the slight creasing as I do, you kind of can lose out on a little bit of eyelid space. So what I want to do is kind of make sure to look straight on, kind of, but relax my eye mostly. Oh, it's so hard. And just make sure it's like moving a little bit higher than I might initially think. It's not quite blended yet, but I just really want to make sure I'm getting it so that you can still see it quite a lot when my eyes are kind of looking straight on, say. Especially right here is a finicky bit you can miss out on. I'm just going to use my pinky finger and blend out the edges of the shimmer. I'm kind of really loving how this looks on its own without going too shadowy. It blends out so nicely. Oh my gosh, sometimes ColourPop, this is ColourPop, I don't know if I mentioned that. The smoke show, I think it's now called Blow and Smoke. Sometimes there's ColourPop for the win. Super affordable too, right? And then I might add just like a touch of depth with one of these darker grays down here, probably this one right here. Just using my pinky finger again. And I'm going to just darken the corner. Oh my god, it looks like I have a nail that's painted this color, but it's just all over. Then I'm going to add that little bit of depth I didn't end up adding on the lower lash line. It's more towards the outer part of the lower lash line. All right, this is looking really cool so far. I don't think I've ever played with these tones together, but we definitely need mascara to see how it's coming along. So I'm going to do that, and I will be one moment. Okay, I did a few extra finishing touches along with my lashes, one of which was putting a liner in the waterline. I just felt like that kind of darker waterline always adds a little bit more fierceness. And then kind of twisting my hair back. I feel if you're going for that Knightcore vibe, like having your hair back feels much more like something a knight would do. Your hair would be getting in your way if you were, you know, in battle. And then I really wish I had these old earrings I had that were daggers. Alas, I got rid of them. I also had these like chainmail long ones, but I never wear silver. So I did get these hoops recently from a family member, though they aren't necessarily medieval in any way. The ultra silver just kind of mimics that vibe of armor, right? And then just ties in with the silver eyes. And I'm feeling pretty happy about this. It is very much a modern look, but if I had on any kind of knightly, medieval, like whether it's like chainmail here or like armor, I feel like this look would look so good for a photo shoot. The last little step I want to do is put a touch of silver highlighter on. This one's from Flower Nose, and it's just like a soft silver, nothing too much, but I feel like I could use that little bit of extra detail on the cheekbone just to kind of tie in the complexion as well with the eyes. When you have like a touch of silver here, it's just like one more place where everything's kind of merging together. And this is the finished makeup look. I am really happy with it. I just wish I had somewhere to go with it, like a photo shoot. I feel like it would look so cool. Now, in terms of bringing this into something that feels a little bit more everyday, I definitely think you could make this a little bit less dramatic by playing with a dark red, but nothing as like vampy as this. And then, you know, a touch of silver on the lid. And then if you had any kind of like dagger earrings, and then put your hair back like this with like kind of that just slight feeling of like, twists in the hair feel kind of like medieval potentially. Those little details kind of all together will give you that modern medieval look that's, not moving into slightly more dramatic editorial territory. But all that to say, I do think the modern medieval look really lends itself to editorial looks and dramatic looks. There's something very powerful and strong about these aesthetics, and I feel like that's why they really kind of have a staying power, so to say. There's so much caught up in the imagination of the collective when it comes to like medieval times, medieval aesthetics, armor, swords. There's so much lore behind it. Speaking of which, I think I'm going to medieval times for my first time. For my first time in years. As a kid, I went all the time, and I'm really excited. It's going to be so fun. Time to get a little playful about things. That's also what these hyper niche aesthetics remind us to. Have fun, get playful, take a theme, and run with it. So anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this exploration, and I will grab Toasty. Toasty, let's take it away. All right, Toasty, are you a knight? No, not ready for doing battle. Guys, I swear he moves. I swear he's not always just a sleepy boy. All right, anyway, as always, thank you for everybody who sticks it out till the end. I really appreciate it. It really helps the channel. And if you're interested in bonus content, definitely check out my new Patreon, which I'll link down below. And if you want to like, comment, and subscribe, all that always helps too. So until next time, may you all find yourselves a little bit of makeup magic, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, witches.